Being a mage or a recluse player in Nightreign can be very underwhelming if you don't know what you're doing. But no worries, today I will show you how you can be an OP mage every round and have the highest chance at success based on my own experiences. For this you want to play as a recluse, which is the only true cancer type of character in the game, as you get both an S in intelligence and faith, granting you access to utilize every spell in the game properly. Staves have been simplified to only scale with intelligence in this game, and seals have been simplified to scale with faith only, as opposed to the original game. More importantly, however, for Recluse being your mage character here, is that you get the ability to infinitely generate FP, making the mage dream a reality. And you start with a staff and 2 spells right off the bat. You get Cleanse Arc to farm low level mobs in the camp you spawn next to get a quick level 2 thanks to the AoE damage, and then you can use Glintstone Pebble to take anything on till you get your first upgrade, which will be quick if you follow my steps here. However, I said infinite FP generation, right? And is that really the case? Well, it is, and this is due to your passive ability that allows you to drain FP every time elemental or magic damage makes contact with the enemy, which loops very well into the gameplay loop as it doesn't use stamina. So essentially it becomes a mini game of you chain casting, then when you run out of stamina, you get FP back by absorbing the residue from your enemy and rinse and repeat. This way you won't have downtime when playing the Recluse, as when you don't have stamina you can't cast anyway, so utilize those moments. But this FP generating mechanic is tied to the Recluse's exclusive skill, the Magic Cocktail. Every time you drain residue to get FP, you add an ingredient to your cocktail, and absorbing the different colors of the circles on the enemies fills your cocktail with a different ingredient. Blue means magic, orange means fire, orange yellowish is holy, and yellowish with sparky stuff is lightning. Filling your cocktail with different combinations of these elements will lead to different extra spells that you can cast in addition for every 4th tap of you draining FP, as the cocktail here has only room for 3 ingredients. Now this magic cocktail ability might seem very overwhelming at first, but the reality here is that it's mostly to support our playstyle and us utilizing the spells from Elden Ring, the main game, quite well. This skill will act more as a supplementary tool rather than the main focus, as you filling up your cocktail is not as deterministic as you might initially think. So I'll be going over that later on in the video. Also, Mobalytics asked me to partner with them, and my build can accordingly be found there as well. Mobalytics is a build planner and guide site, and it was only convenient for me to make a guide there too, as I've already used them before for other games, which was a smooth experience, as it's just an easy platform to quickly make a structured guide. And they also made guides for the other classes as well, by the way, if you're interested in that. And in general, Mobalytics is just a huge library of games with builds, so check that out, link in the description. But to first actually get OP from the core, you have to get some good gear as soon as possible. In this case, a good staff and a good seal, so you have good coverage of both magic as well as elemental damage. There's a lot of RNG to the game, so you can't really know what you're going to get every round, but you can however increase your chance in getting the good stuff. And you can do that by opening your map when you're flying and checking out your points of interest, which are going to be the cathedrals, the forts, and the mage towers with these icons respectively. The broken cathedrals have both a chance to drop seals as well as a staff, and there are different variations of these broken cathedrals. There's the variation where there's a hole in the middle of it, which is generally going to be your best version, as you can quickly go down, check out the seals there, and across the spot with the seals will be a boss that will frequently also drop a staff. And this boss is very easily killable and also soloable in trios that you can quickly get rid of. So you have the potential to get a good staff and a seal right away. And in Nightreign, you can actually cast with the catalyst in either your left or right hand, so you can use both a seal and a staff at the same time. The other version of the cathedral is where the seal will be next to the boss fight, which is a nice version as well, as you can quickly check if there's a good seal drop there. And then there's another version of these cathedrals, usually with the guardian golem, where the seals will instead be on the top of the cathedral, which is kind of also the annoying one, as you have to climb a lot, and out of the 3 versions, that one is the least preferable in my opinion. These cathedrals, however, are all very low level structures, so you want to target them early on in day 1 and try to get your first upgrade with them as soon as possible. But alternatively, forts are also really good for staves specifically, as at the top, close to the boss fight, will be a room with some staves in the ranks. Usually you can already get a blue upgrade from those, which is nice since these forts are also low level and the boss fight is easily doable yet again at level 1 or 2. Then the mage towers, finally another great building to focus on in early day 1, or even if you're just en route, as they are very easy to navigate and get your reward. You just have to find the crest, which will usually be near the tower or inside, destroy it, and you can climb to the top and you'll have a guaranteed mage related drop there too. Furthermore, you'll also sometimes land near these small cabin type of structures or find them all running, so if the game spawns you near one of them, then you can quickly get a seal like that right away, and usually the mobs here will also get you to level 2 as well. Okay, so those structures are what you want to target early day 1, and these are generally just good low level structures to clear at say level 2, 3, 4 anyways, so your team will all benefit from it, and you will more often than not get a first decent upgrade and preferably a blue upgrade. Near the end of day 1, if possible, do definitely the boss at the bottom of the castle in the middle. This is a guaranteed purple drop, and when you move up you get a guaranteed talisman as well, which can be really good. If you then still have the time, you can also start clearing the upper parts of the castle, which is juicy XP. At day 2, then you want to really focus the higher level content to make sure you keep scaling or leveling your mage here properly. So either finish up the castle, do the boss at the top, or do the elite boss fights as indicated with these icons on the map, the blue monster with a red outline, or do the shifting earth event if you have one present. These three will always be the best option for day 2. Not only do you get a ton of XP, but you also get a bunch of boons and the higher rarity chest, or whatever these things are. Higher rarity being purple and orange, and that's exactly what we need for our mage here, as the purple drops are really good for her. Ultimately, doing this, you can easily reach level 13, 14, or even the max level 15 when you reach the final boss, and those level ranges are great to be at when fighting the day 3 boss. Now, I said that the purple drops are really good for our mage here, and that's because there are only a few purple staves in the game, and these also have the option to provide you the best spell in Nightreign quite consistently actually. And the reason for that is exactly because there are only a few options here. Since purple staves can only be used at level 7+, let's first talk about spells that you can get early from neutral or blue staves, so you can accordingly destroy everything in day 1 as well. Now I'm going to name 10 excellent spells that can hard carry for this purpose and be obtained early on, and the likelihood of you not getting a single of these is then also quite small, so you should generally be good if you follow my advice here. In no particular order then on the list, number 1 is going to be Glintstone Ice Crack. An absolutely cracked spell, as the name kinda hints at, and especially if you can get it early, because it has the capacity to inflict frostbite, and does that also quite quickly as well. It's a huge damage proc as well as a debuff that makes you and your team all deal more damage to the target for quite some time. Glintstone Ice Crack was great in the original game, but is obviously even better here because more people can profit from the frostbite. Number 2, Glintstone Stars, an amazing spell that also comes on the lower rarity staves that has in fact also tracking. Due to it having tracking, you can successfully win the entire round if you are able to get it. It's just a great way to guarantee damage in an otherwise very fast-paced game with bosses going all over the place. Number 3, Night Comet. Another classic from the original game, still great here. Enemies can dodge it, good damage, you can pierce multiple enemies with it at the same time, making it also have that AoE component, and you can charge it for even more damage, which means also synergies with some of the boons and talismans in the game. Number 4, Discus of Light. The best holy spell in the game, and this is going to be your bread and butter holy damage token spell if you can get it, or whenever you need to aim for holy damage, always go for this option. You don't have a lot of options for a holy damage source as a caster anyways, but this one is everything you need. It comes out fast, spammable, so the damage rakes up quickly. The most efficient FP spell in the game, was also the case in the original game. Has multiple instances of hitting your target potentially as it returns to you, and each hit means you can siphon FP accordingly. So good synergy with the Recluse's kit. Number 5, Black Flame. A bit anecdotal, but I would definitely say that this spell drops quite frequently and is in general just a great option for facilitating your fire damage needs. Black Flame is in fact just normal fire damage, so you can siphon fire residues from your enemies with this spell. But since it's Black Flame, you also get that sap mechanic ingrained. You might already know the Black Flame sap mechanic is a percentage based on the enemy's HP, which means the spell will always have a good baseline of damage either way. Number 6 then, Lightning Spear. Your token bread and butter spell for if you need a source of lightning damage, and this one drops very frequently as well from my experience. Has great damage and range, can do AoE damage if striking targets next to each other, and it's just a very reliable spell like in the original game. Number 7, Magic Glint Blade. Blade drops frequently, can be stacked and cast from a safe spot, and will linger for some time till it actually shoots off, making it quite reliable to get the cast off because you can exactly cast it a few times preemptively. Number 8 then, Adula's Moonblade. For a melee spell, it still has good range, but more importantly is its nice AoE damage, and it can also proc Frostbite, and Frostbite, like mentioned before, should always be a high priority. It is the best status effect in Nightreign in my opinion. Number 9 then, Great Oracular Bubble. Has tracking but is somewhat slower and not as spammable as the other spells, but it compensates very well with having a lot of good stance damage and burst damage, and in terms of the stance damage, it is in fact one of the spells with the highest values in that department. For number 10 then, we are going to go with the Glintstone Projectile family spells. You still have very reliable sources of damage in these, kind of standard spells, but Comet Shards is definitely the best here in my opinion, as it has a nice balance between high damage and also still having the potential to come out fast. And these spells also have somewhat of a homing aspect, as they kind of track towards the enemy as well. Not as aggressive as others, but definitely enough to make the list. So those are all good early game spells, but what about when you reach level 7? Now ultimately there are too many spells, as you know from the original Elden Ring, and many spells are just not good, and many spells you also rarely see or get in this version of the game because, yeah, RNG. So for obvious reasons, I'm not going to go over all of them. I just made this sheet, however, that kinda, is a good TLDR of what you want to aim for, including the spells I just went over, but also some others. And if you keep these spells in mind and this general sheet, you will have a more general approach to every round, and you can, in that way, kinda, aim for stuff, even though there is a lot of RNG. With 2 additional special shouts then being Cannon of Haima as an AoE tool to quickly clear camps and points of interest, and makes killing mobs also kind of appealing as an additional strategy to level up, as you otherwise usually just want to focus bosses mostly. But Cannon of Haima can very effectively deal with groups of enemies, and same story for Radican's Rings of Light, which is another holy spell but has a circular pattern of practically touching everything around you, so it's in the same space as Cannon of Haima for being a good provider of an alternative gameplay loop where you can still level up quickly. In the sheet, however, you do see a few options in the solo carry trios bracket, and these spells are the best options in the game in my opinion, with the absolute best spell in Nightreign being Stars of Ruin, since there are only a few purple staves in the game anyways, so the likelihood of you getting this pretty much every run when you're going through various bosses with purple rarity drops is pretty high. And that's exactly what I just mentioned in my strategy, because at the end of day 1 or day 2 you should consistently get the purple rarity drops, especially because as a Recluse you get an innate bonus to getting a staff drop when you fight bosses, so you get this spell quite frequently from my experience when you target those bosses, and if you do, you definitely want to choose it, as you can solo carry the remainder of the game. That's because the spell has really good tracking, is extremely aggressive, so it can actually keep up with bosses that move all over the place, comes out very fast too, staggers over and over, so it delays attacks from your enemies, and that can give you a lot of extra room, and you can charge it for more damage, and every single hit from Stars of Ruin gives you magic residue, so you can siphon all of that FP back, quickly get back to full HP pretty much after every cast, and because you can reliably get it frequently, it makes it the best spell in Nightreign for me, no contest. So if you can get it, get it. For its little brothers, Stars of Shower and the earlier mentioned Glintstone Stars are also kind of similar if you can get this spell, and also will fill in a similar role, so definitely do not sleep on those either. However, if you can't get Stars of Ruin, then the second best spell is going to be Ancient Death Rancor, or maybe even its little brother, Rancor Call, also obtainable from a purple rarity staff. Out of the two, Ancient Death Rancor is definitely the better one if you have the luxury to choose, and in the original game the spell has an int fate requirement, making it more niche to use. Here, however, none of that, just pure intelligence, and it's pretty much good for all the same reasons as Stars of Ruin. Tracking, a lot of projectile spam, cumulatively racking up damage. It also staggers the boss, so delays incoming attacks, and it just gives you a lot of momentum. And this spell has a lot of range to it as well, so the pressure is definitely on with it. This spell, however, is from my experience not as easy to get as Stars of Ruin, making the plan to rely on it not as fruitful, but if you can get it, definitely grab it. At number 3 then is going to be Ranni's Dark Moon. Even harder to get, but when you get it, absolute destruction is the result. And can again solo carry the remainder of the round. Tracking, huge damage per hit, and it also inflicts frostbite. Randy's Dark Moon can also deflect incoming spells as well when you're inside the moon, so that's another benefit, and makes spamming it actually also quite easy because you can just deflect all the stuff that is being thrown at you while you go ahead with shooting off these nuclear bombs. With that, then, we have discussed the best spells. Subscribe with that mind-boggling information in mind if you haven't done so yet, and let's continue because we're definitely not done yet, and you definitely do not want to miss out on the following things, like making sure to rush the Remembrance quest of the Recluse ASAP, as you can get a relic that gives you auto-casted Terra Magica every time you siphon FP, which is really good obviously because you will be doing that all the time, and it's just a buff to your magic damage output that is now passively given to you pretty much. And say combine that with Stars of Rune or a Rennie's Dark Moon and the damage becomes amazing, so definitely get this relic effect as soon as possible. It's also why overall sorceries being of magic damage will have a higher potential as a Recluse as opposed to incantations as well. So this relic is a must-have, and then the other exclusive Recluse specific relic effects are also a must-have. They just make your ult better and raise the attack power of your whole team when you use your ult, while also giving you more HP. It's just a lot of utility. For other relic options, I would then get stuff that increases your rune acquisition, so you can get those level ups faster and also just end up at a higher level in general, as well as a relic effect that gives you a stone sword key at the start of your round, which you can use very well as Evergils are a great way to get extra runes. So I just mentioned the Recluse's ult, and it's one of the better ults, especially when you compare to the ults of the other classes, which are kind of lackluster in my opinion, but this one can be very useful for your entire party. Every time you ult and you accordingly hit your targets, you get both HP and FP back, and that applies for your entire team. Every spell that hits your target multiple times in succession is going to be great synergy with your ult, giving you the ability to fully restore your HP and FP back in one go. And the ult can be very clutch for making sure you and your team do not die, and to get the most out of it, you just want to make sure you hit your enemy as much as possible when it's active. And it's also great to time it right when the enemy is focusing you as a squishy character and it's going to do bad things to you, to deny that, as you get iframes when casting the ult, and then the ult also synergizes with some of your magic cocktails, especially the ones that hit your enemies multiple times quickly, and your magic cocktail is the other skill that I mentioned at the start. And now is the time to go over it. Like I said, it's more of a support tool than the main thing that you want to focus on here, and that's generally because the spells you can actually get that were also in the original game will generally just do more damage and will do so more consistently. The problem with your magic cocktail is then that you also can't always very well influence what you get, as the residues applied on your enemies are also affected by your teammates. So if one person is spamming fire and then the other is spamming lightning while you want magic residues, well, it's not going to be an easy time getting the desired residue, as it quickly switches between set residues. But that's obviously also not always the case. Sometimes you'll just get what you want, and you can also drain residues from your own teammates, so there are some variables here as well. That being said, I think it's good to know which ones are worth using and which ones aren't when you have the possibility to have a say in the matter. So let's go from best to worst. First of all, magic plus lightning is probably just the best offensive spell here that you can get through your cocktail. All things considered, it's very easy to make as both those elements are very prevalent and you only need 2 elements for it. It's just a simple blue slash spell, but it comes out very fast and has great range, and from my experience it's harder to miss with it than to actually hit your target with it, making it very consistent damage, and also actually packs a punch for sure. And it's also the only spell where after casting your magic cocktail you can hold on to it in case you want to delay the cast. So all things considered, it's very good to weave in between your regular casts, and that's just why I think that this one is actually the best out of all options. Next one is also a great one, the Ice Block, and this is one of the 4 tri-ingredient cocktails, so it uses 3 different elements as shown on screen, and it's just really good because you get invulnerability when you cast it and are in the ice block. So great if you want to negate incoming damage or if you already had the aggro, and the ice damage takes here build up, and also can in fact proc frostbite on your enemies, providing you a lot of value when it happens obviously. Overall great option here. Next up is then the free FP cocktail, which is quite easy to make with it only requiring holy and magic residues. If you have spells that consume a lot of FP, practically your entire bar if you want to fully utilize them, like the Dragon Breath for example, or Comet Azure, those all now become much more interesting to use, as this is essentially what the Cerulean Hidden Tier was in the original game, giving you the option to not worry about FP for some seconds while you go ham with your extremely draining spell. Because you're locked in the animation, you can't get FP back with your passive anyway, so it makes the strategy now a lot more interesting also, definitely also resulting in good wins if you have an easy way to make this cocktail over and over, but also just in general, having no FP consumption can never be bad when your whole identity is casting spells over and over. Then we have one with quite a lot of potential if timed right. it's the auto parry one, which is activated by Holy and Lightning, and it also allows for reckless playing as you essentially get a way to ignore parryable damage for several seconds. Spam cast it during that and it provides of course a lot of momentum, and it can also result into stance breaking your enemies as well, as parrying contributes to that, so it's a lot of value if the enemy is actually focusing on you. If not, or if the enemy changes aggro mid-cast or just deals non-parryable damage anyways, which is going to happen all the time as well, then yeah, it's not that great, so make sure to use it in the right moments. Next up is then the Tri-Ingredient Lightning Strike. It's a very hard-hitting damage spell, especially when you consider that it's from your magic cocktail, so it's essentially a spell that doesn't cost FP or stamina, but the only problem here is that you need to make sure that the enemies stay in the zone that it's targeting, as it takes some seconds to fully go off, and if the enemy moves slightly out of the radius in that time frame, then yeah, it's a miss and the value of the spell drastically lowers. In the same line of thinking is the Tri-Ingredient Cocktail of Gravity Orb, also a really good spell if you can get it off. It sucks in enemies and deals good AoE damage when it explodes. Problem here however is its range. You have to be close to the target and it takes time to cast it as well, so you can either get hit or just die while you're trying to get it off, or whatever you're targeting can move out of it. However, it can provide a lot of value, especially in boss fights that revolve around having multiple mobs, because it will affect all of those at the same time. Then we also have the final Tri-Ingredient Cocktail, which is this breath type of attack. Mostly interesting because it can restore your allies HP and FP if you're in the breath, while at the same time you can damage the enemy with the same breath as well, making it quite great if you can utilize it properly. Problem here however is yet again the extremely tiny range and the fact that you're animation locked. So in fast-paced fights it's not going to consistently give you the value you want, and thus it's ultimately not that amazing. Pretty okay option is then the Fire and Holy one, giving you essentially just more HP. It's nothing too crazy, but it can definitely help out. Fire and Lightning is then a quite fun spell here as well, if you can manage to make sure it doesn't lead into your death. As a squishy mage, you don't really want to be too close to the boss, and this spell does exactly that. It puts you right on top of it, but in some fights it can actually provide a lot of momentum, as you can also use it to ignore incoming damage and then subsequently deal damage. And in fights where you're already heavily favored to win, it can definitely help out with getting the runes and kill faster, as it's a fast-paced spell that you can also easily weave in and combine with your regular spells. 3 times magic early and later on magic and fire are good for having a quick way to get back-to-back FP siphons, and they definitely do not do a lot of damage, but they can apply pressure by staggering enemies, especially the humanoid ones, in addition to every tick giving you a possibility to drain FP. Finally, 3 times fire should just be avoided at all times. It's terrible, and 3 times lightning and 3 times holy are also not that impactful overall, but if nothing else is possible, they still have a decent minor buff in the utility department that you can just use. A few more things you need to make sure to do is then to stack your inventory full with weapons, as all these passives here stack even if the weapons are not in your main or offhand, as long as there's not a hand icon shown in the passive effect description, because in those cases you actually do have to have it equipped. And regarding passives and boons, always be on the lookout for increased damage through improved sorceries or incantations, type of effects depending on what you have, faster spellcasting speed, FP efficiency related passives, but also do not neglect damage negation and more HP, as damage negation is very good in the final fight. That can be the difference between a loss and a win. Then also definitely give a high priority to walking effects as well, as they are in particular good on a Recluse player, as every time you cast a spell, guess what, you'll start to walk, and thus you proc these walking effects pretty much all the time without having to think about it, making them have a lot of value. The orange wraiths here are especially good if you can get them. They can roll on a weapon that if you then place in your offhand, makes it so that you can have Ancient Death Rancor passively being cast pretty much. Yeah, that's as OP as it actually sounds. The Frenzied Flames are also good, and like that you have several of these type of effects that can roll on both gear as well as your boons, so keep being on the lookout for those. In this case, the orange wraiths rolled on the Jellyfish Shield, which is a great option for an offhand to buff your damage in case you never can get a second seal or staff worth running. In the same line of thinking, if you find spells like Golden Vow, you can also always cast those before heading into a fight. Remember the mage towers, by the way, that I talked about in the strategy to get good gear? Well, they are also loaded with Starlight Shards, which are the equivalent of FP Flasks in this game, so it's great to load up quickly on those while you're visiting those towers. Merchants also sell these for very cheap, by the way, and in day 3 a merchant will always have 2 of them as well, which I would highly recommend to get, as in the fast pacedness of the final fight, you might want to brute force that fight as much as possible and not worry about FP regen. You could also give them to the Revenant in your team though, as they're not as efficient mages as the Recluse. And in the same line of thinking, do not forget to get all the extra flasks from the churches. Try to do them en route while going through your main points of interest, and they will provide you a lot of extra sustain in the day 3 fight. With that, then you now have a very solid strategy to destroy every every new round in Nightreign. And even though there's a lot of RNG to it, if you approach it like I did and keep the good spells, prio the right places on the map, the right boons, and generally just know how to spend your day 1 and 2, and to also keep in mind that a limited number of purple saves are in the game to begin with, so you can really target spells like Stars of Ruin quite frequently, you'll be bound to have success in your runs. Let me know how it goes in the comments.